Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 4 of 12 Days of the Comic Source. We're counting down to Christmas with Bad Idea. Here today to talk about Whalesville and Rocks and Minerals. It's a one shot with both stories in it. It's got the first story, Whalesville, which is written by Matt Kindt. Amazing stylized art from Adam Pollina. And then we have the second story, Rocks and Minerals, also written by Matt Kindt, with art by Tony Millionaire, who is just a renowned cartoonist who's been working in the sequential art medium for decades. The colors in Whalesville are by Matt Hollingsworth, and they're just based on the tale. Being this kid being swallowed by a whale. They're not quite sepia tone, but they are. They're not bright. They're not vibrant. They're a little saturated. They're it's a lot of browns and darker greens and darker blues, and it's very much like an old fashioned tale. Dave Sharpe does the letters for Whalesville, and then Tony Millionaire handles the lettering on Rocks and Minerals himself. The color in Tony Millionaire's story, Rocks and Minerals, is by Jim Campbell, who's somebody he's worked with for a long, long time. So what's great about this book, this one shot with the two stories, these stories definitely all ages. Unlike Sleigh Bells that we talked about yesterday, you can share these with your kids. I shared both these stories with my daughter, who at the time they came out was, I want to say, let's see, it came out in 2001, so she would have been 10, and she just loved them. She loved both of them, especially Whalesville. And there's a line in Whalesville that we'll talk about that that her and I walked around saying for months after. Months after, we'd walk around the house and we just randomly spout that line to each other and just got a kick out of it. The other thing that's really awesome is I got a chance to sit down with Matt Kindt and talk about this book way back when, I think in 2021, to get his thoughts on both of these stories. And I'll put a link to that interview in the show notes if you're curious. You want to go back and hear what Matt had to say, you definitely can do that. In terms of the stories, though, these are just, they feel very wholesome. They're very different. They both have happy endings in a way. But yeah, I just really enjoyed them. And this is the kind of story, the kind of comic that shows you what's possible in the medium, what's possible with sequential storytelling, as opposed to something like prose or even children's picture books. So what did you think of this overall, Rocky?
I really liked it, and it was again, it's a feel good story, and you nailed it when you said it's it is for children, and appropriately, it should have a happier ending. It reminded me, obviously, the comparisons to Moby Dick are right. I mean, it's hard not to think of Moby Dick when you think of an angry whale and a war between the old man and the sea, angry, Moby Dick, angry against the ship captain Ahab that wants to kill him, and this is sort of a play on that, and there's so much anger and quest for revenge in Moby Dick, and this is what I love about this is that it takes place inside the whale, and the motivation here is a young boy is swallowed by the male swallowed by the whale. And of course, the father is only looking for vengeance on the whale because he thinks he's lost his son. And and of course, at the end, there is sort of a rescue, but really that's the crux of the story. It's the adventure that this young boy has inside this world, hence the title of the story, Whalesville, that you know sort of underscores the themes and the heart of the story itself, as inside the whale is all these wonderful sea life, sea creatures that are still alive. They're just swallowed by the whale, and it's called Whalesville because there's literally an entire life. There's an entire city, for all intents and purposes, with different life forms within the whale itself, and it's the relationships and the bonds formed by this young child named Way, who ultimately, as he befriends all the sea life and ultimately escapes the whale, and by doing so, saves his fellow friends and helps calm down the anger and bring love back to his father, resurrected and then reuniting with his father, who immediately stops attacking the whale. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. But you can't help but, I mean, the absolutely gorgeous art, which you've already talked about. I mean, it's just it is kids would love this because it's so adventurous. It's got different animals in it. Of course, they all talk. They all have their own personality. Young Wei has his own personality. They all want what's best for each other, and Young Wei figures out right away. There's the central conceit, and what makes Disney movies work when they're done right is that when you have a young child who can figure it out and has wisdom beyond his or her years, and in this case, it's Wayne knowing that there's another world out there, and his fellow, his other animals, they don't know it, they don't believe him, and for him to uh, his belief in that and knowing what is happening underscores. There's tension here because you wonder how, you want this to have a happy ending, and ultimately it does. But it's very well done here, and this isn't just for kids; it's for everyone. And I'm actually curious. There's lots of lines in here that I like. I'd really be curious to know what line your daughter likes so much. So, sorry, you're on mute there, my friend.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But I wanted to talk first. You mentioned the Adam Pollina art. I mean, the character designs here, right? Because you're right. So the whole idea is this kid was sailing with his father. They're on a whaling ship. He gets thrown overboard. He gets swallowed by a whale. He wakes up there. But the story actually starts a little sooner than that. We don't see Weiwa or Wei, the little boy, right off the bat. Instead, we meet some of the sea creatures that have been swallowed by this whale and live in this little town, this shanty town inside the whale, thus the name Whalesville that you mentioned. So we start off with Caleb the crab. There's also Angela, who's like an anglerfish. There's Jack, who's a seagull, and there's a seahorse named Lily. Um, and so it starts off, and we meet Caleb. He's mad that Jack's been pooping on the roof of his house. Uh, and Jack's like, "I wasn't me." Caleb goes out in search of. He's like, "I wasn't me." He's like, "You're the only bird here." Of course, it was you. So it's hilarious. Then they come across Way, and the story starts from there. But what you notice right away is just the character designs, right? Like you said, there's a lot of sea life, all these different creatures, all these different characters that have their own personalities. They also have their own distinctive looks. And I mentioned Angela, this anglerfish, and you're like, well, how can there be a fish there? Well, she's in a plastic bag with water, and the plastic bag is in a roller skate. Because again, these are just like the detritus that's been thrown in the ocean that the whale has swallowed over the years. And so, yeah, they come across Way, and they kind of make a connection. He doesn't really remember. And throughout the story, he starts to remember that there is a world outside. Whereas these other sea creatures, they don't. They've forgotten that there's a world outside. And as you said, when Wade tries to convince them that there is, they're kind of like, you're crazy, what have you. But then a harpoon shows up. You mentioned the father who's, wants to get his revenge on this whale for what he thinks is the death of his son. And Wade, again, jogs his memory, realizes, hey, we need to break this rope. I need to go out the blowhole so I can be reunited with my father. And so the whale's not killed, and all the rest of the sea life that's in there can continue to live their life because they're friends, and they're, ultimately they're pretty happy. I think some of them come around to thinking, well, maybe Way is right. And there is a bigger world out there, but we kind of enjoy what we have here. We enjoy our friendships. Caleb enjoys the house that he has. And what's really interesting about the existence that they have is that, over time, this whale is constantly eating. It's constantly swallowing things, and you never know what's going to wash up on the shore, right? The little dry area that they have in the whale's stomach, basically, because he's constantly swallowing things. And I mentioned Jack always pooping on Caleb's roof, and he's like, I need to get a piece of plastic or something and put a roof over my roof. And at one point, he finds a flag, and it's a flag from the whaling ship, actually. And when he finds that, again, it's another piece that jogs Way's memory, and he asks Way to help him put it up over his roof. And Jack's like, oh, that's really bright and shiny because it's this bright yellow flag, right? He's like, I really can't miss your house now. Like he's going to poop on it even more, right? And Caleb's like, no, don't you dare, don't you dare. And Jack says, well, maybe you need now that he had a roof, and now he's got a roof. And Jack says, maybe you need a roof for your roof.
Yeah.
And that's the line. That's the line that we would walk around all the time saying, maybe you need a roof for your roof. And how many layers are you going to go, right? Because no matter how many roofs you put on, guess what, Caleb? Jack's going to poop on them. because that's what birds do. But yeah, where this again, where it shines is kind of the heartfelt nature of these characters. You mentioned it; they do care about each other so much. Caleb, clearly from the beginning, even though he's a little perturbed by Jack, it's clear that he appreciates the friendship he has with these other creatures, and Weiwa, like right away, is sort of welcomed into their circle of friends and what have you, and um, credit to who he is as a person, that he does want to get back to his father, but it feels very genuine that he also wants to be sure that Whalesville, that the little town these creatures have created and want to live in peacefully. He wants to make sure they're protected. He wants to make sure that the whale's not killed, not for the whale's sake, but for the sake of the friends that he's made. So when you put that in there with these very fanciful character designs, it's very fine line work by Adam Pollina, a lot of detail. As I said at the beginning, it's stylized, but when you look at the design of Caleb the Crab, when you look at Angela, it's just brilliant. Angela being in the Ziploc bag in the roller skates so she can get around. Again, just brilliant. Lily, the seahorse, also done very beautifully, and you add in the colors, as I mentioned. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the colors, a lot of browns and lighter pinks, lighter blues that really sell kind of the tone of the story. It just brilliantly done. I mean, even the cover, you can see it behind us, where the whale is just massive under the water. It's just amazing. There's nothing not to like. And again, what I love is the all ages feel. Like this is for everybody, for anybody can read this and enjoy the themes and just fall in love with these characters. They're just fantastic. Anything else to add, Rocky?
Uh, just that it's really nice to have the a great children's tale like this, and a great segue from a children's tale like this. And as they get older, throw Moby Dick. This is the lighter side of it. And then Moby Dick has maybe not so a happy ending, but no, I really enjoyed this, and it just really goes to show just how Bad Idea has. They really do have an incredible eclectic array of different kinds of stories, and they've really covered all the bases here from something that can cater to children, yet adults, and yet we've also seen something we've reviewed more violent stories, science fiction, time travel. I mean, it's a little bit of everything, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying the 12 days of the comic source presents with Bad Idea, is that we're going to be covering and really putting on stark display what Bad Idea uh, has out there. And again, to my eternal dismay, my retailer needs to be more aggressive getting some Bad Ideas.
Yeah, the second story, again, just as interesting, just as fun. We have anthropomorphic rocks, right? Rocks and minerals, amazing art, different style from Tony Millionaire, but still very detailed, very kind of esoteric. And as Rocky mentioned earlier, it's this idea that the world has ended. It seems like there's been a nuclear war. They call it the Great Polishing, because you would imagine if a nuclear bomb goes off and like the ground is melted, it's going to look like glass. It's going to be shiny, right? So they talk about the time before the Great Polishing, when and they talk about the lands outside of where they exist as the unpolished zone, which is forbidden to be in. But it follows the story of these three different types of minerals, these three different kind of rocks. There's one called Gomer. I'm not 100% sure what kind of rock he is, but we also have igneous, right? And then there's Princess, who's a hunk of diamond. And there are other characters as well, and their names sort of intimate what sort of minerals or rocks they are as well. So that's really interesting also. But basically, what happens is these three kids, Princess and Iggy and Gomer, they like to explore, like young kids will do. Um, and when they're doing that, they actually go to the zoo one day and they come across a turtle in its shell, and that's a weird kind of rock. And then the turtle sticks his head out. They starts talking. They're like, "Wait, what's going on?" they go to the queen, who is Princess's mother, so also a hunk of diamond, and talk to her about it. She freaks out because they're outside the where they're supposed to be. They're in the forbidden area. They're in the unpolished zone, and so because the turtle, when it wakes up, says it needs to get to the pond, and they don't even know what a pond is, right? So they agreed to go and try to help this turtle get to the pond, despite the queen telling him to stay away. And she sends a couple of her enforcers after them to try to stop them. And again, the queen, every night she tells the tale of the time before the Great Polishing. She talks about how the soft skins, that being humans, in the before time used to walk on them, used to use them to create roads and drive on them, used to stack them up one on top of the other and build these giant things called buildings. And they couldn't talk, they couldn't walk around, they had to just act like they were rocks, right? So this idea that even before the great polishing, like maybe you think it's nuclear mutation or whatever that gave these rocks and minerals the ability to walk and talk and speak. But apparently, even before that happened, they could. They just weren't allowed to because they couldn't let humans see them. So she's scared. She's frightful that those times will come back. So, but these kids, they have good hearts, and they want the turtle to find its way back to where it's supposed to be. So they go out, they meet some other rocks and minerals, Barry and Ruth, who don't want to live under the queen's rules, and so they kind of live out in the middle of nowhere. Or Barry and Rose, I think, actually. Rose Quartz, I guess, is what she is. So thus the name Rose. And they find out, that we don't know where the Great Pond is, they say, but we have somebody that might be able to help you. And they call for Bob, and Bob is a duck, right? And this whole idea that animals, a few animals have survived the Holocaust, and they're starting to come back. They're starting to thrive again after, the effects of the war. And so Bob actually leads them to where the pond is, and the forces of the queen, Laz, and Puma, who's a pumice stone, along with Flint, who's like this little attack dog. So he can breathe fire. You know how you start fire with like flint and steel? He can breathe fire. He's they're the queen's enforcers. They try to stop them, but luckily Iggy and Gomer and Princess are able to get to the pond. That's where life has sort of returned, right? Like in the polished zone, everything is rock. There's nothing living. But when they get to the pond, there's trees, there's grass, there's blue skies, there's obviously water of the pond, and there's a lot of life. There's bees, there's flowers, there's other turtles and what have you. And so Bob and his duck friends realize that their newfound friends are in trouble, and they bomb Puma and Laz and Flint with 6-packs of some kind of cola or whatever, to stop them and allow the turtle Elpis to get back into the water. But then the queen returns and or gets there actually and says, what's going on? What are you doing? Melt these unpolished rocks. And the kids, Princess especially, stand up for their newfound friends and say, stop, you can't do this. They're beautiful. Look at them. This is life. They're not hurting us. Live and let live, if you will. So it's a good story. The queen, although disgruntled, you can see toward the end of the story, is sitting on a little hill with her daughter. Princess has her arms around the queen, and she's allowing everybody to kind of make friends or whatever. She has a look on her face like she's not super happy about this. It's the worry that things could go back to before the Great Polishing and where they had to sort of hide out. So you kind of understand, she feels responsible for making sure these rocks and minerals can continue to have a good life. But the kids realize they've done something really, really good. And again, it's just a lot of fun. Tony Millionaire, he describes himself as a cartoonist. He's not a comic book artist. He's a cartoonist. And this is really what cartooning is, right? It's telling a story with words and pictures. And, this isn't some kind of photorealistic style or some sort of DC house style. It's something all its own. When you talk about, well, how am I going to draw an igneous rock that can walk and talk and think, but still make it recognizable as a rock. Same thing with a pumice stone or a piece of flint that is supposed to sort of look like a dog. That's what cartooning is, and being able to. I mean, I'm talking about the queen, right, and how she's a little bit disgruntled at the end with the way everything turns out, sort of begrudgingly allowing it to happen. She's a hunk of diamond, and Tony Millionaire can give her an expression on her face that conveys that with no word. There's no dialogue, there's no exposition, there's no boxes telling you what's going on, but just by looking at it what's happening. That's cartooning. That's sequential storytelling. That's the brilliance of Tony Millionaire, who is just legendary in the cartooning world. So again, a very fun tale. My favorite is Flint, the little attack dog, if you will. But also the thing I love about the story is just that these kids, these rocks and minerals that are representing the kids in the story, they're determined to do the right thing, and they inherently know what the right thing is, and that's an important message. I get where the adults, quote unquote, in the story are coming from in terms of the worry that things are going to go back to the before time when we drove on rocks and minerals, when we walked on rocks and minerals, when we stacked them on top of each other to create buildings, whatever those are. But these kids, they inherently know right and wrong, and that's a great message. And so, brilliant story, a lot of fun, and yeah, really enjoy it. So,
and it's from the mouths of babes too. It's like the young princess says, reminds her mother about melting rock is what caused all this, and I'm assuming it's a reference to probably the way mankind destroyed ourselves by fire or a nuclear war or whatever the case might have been. And from the mouths of babes, wisdom, even rocks. I mean, even a story about rocks. Rocks are more intelligent than we humans are.
yeah,
Even rocks know the futility of. Rocks know the value life arguably more than we do if we allow ourselves to explore the darker angels, demons of our nature, and destroy ourselves. And rocks are always going to be around. And it's interesting, yeah, man, humanity's not around anymore, but you got some birds, you got some turtles, and you got rocks. And rocks, it's interesting that, the remnants of humanity that remain after we're gone are in rocks. So it's kind of a sad irony, but again, there, this is great. This is another one. It's perfectly it's perfectly positioned too, coming after Whalesville, because this whole package of a comic of a graphic novelization is perfect for kids because it's great message, insightful, uh, something to talk about. I mean, it's a great story with you and your with you and your daughter on the first story, and yeah, no, this was really good. And it's funny, like you know what, actually, I found enduring the more I read it was the lettering. The
yeah,
lettering. I'm so used to a kind of a formalized letter from the comic books we always read for DC and what have you. I kind of like it, and it sort of reminded me of why. That's one good thing about this. The lettering itself almost imbues a kind of personality to the rocks themselves because the spacing between the letters was different. It was larger, and it was just it was also easier to read. The fact that my sight there's a reason why I wear glasses, but no, I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. Good story.
yeah. Highly recommended. Everybody, go check it out. Share it with your kids. Makes for a great bedtime story. So, Whalesville and Rocks and Minerals, highly recommended. So, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, on the Comic Source YouTube channel, we appreciate this subscription. We don't put out a ton of content on the video channel, but we're hoping to increase that. But Rocky does put out our DC Spotlight every week on his YouTube channel. So be sure you head over to his channel, Comic Space Boom ! On YouTube. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave comments on our DC Spotlights. We love to interact with listeners and people that watch the videos and give us their thoughts on that week's DC books. We really appreciate it. If you want to listen to the audio only versions, maybe you're in the car, maybe you're on the subway, what have you, you can just go to wherever you get your podcasts, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe for the audio only version. So we appreciate the support as always. We want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, happy holidays, whatever it is you celebrate. We hope you're enjoying time with friends and family. So come back with us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the horror series The Lot for day 5 of the Comic Source. It's very creepy, it's very moody, it's very scary, and I can't wait to hear what Rocky thinks about it. So again, we appreciate you joining us as always, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Catch you later.